Hi, I'm David Bernstein. I was thinking before this about memories of Steve that are different because what Lori said about her and some of what Paul said could just as well have been about me. But I'll go back. I'm from San Francisco, and during my second year of college, which was at Pitzer College in California, I was in a very intense relationship with a non-Jewish girl. And my rabbi, Rabbi Wiener from Shearith Israel San Francisco, thought that a great idea for me would be to go to Israel for a year. And he called up Stephen Schafer and said, I have someone who's been a great leader. He was a leader in Nifty, he had been to Kutz, he had done all those things, but he's fallen by the wayside, I guess. He's going out with someone non-Jewish, and I really think he needs to go to Israel, and I'm worried because he told me he wants to go to India for a year. So I don't know this, of course, but I'm in my college, and this is before internet and emails and all that. This is 1974, something like that. And I get a call from someone who says, my name is Rabbi Stephen Schafer. I get a call from my dorm room. I'm in LA. Can I come out to see you? And I said, okay, where did you get my name, whatever. He said, I'm coming out to Claremont to see you. He came out and he told me about this he came out and I thought it was just the most unbelievable thing. And he tells me about this program called CAY, College Academic Year on Kibbutz, and you have to go on it. It's the perfect thing for you. You have to go on it. And I say, you don't know me. How do you know it's the perfect thing for you? And I said, well, I've known you for 30 seconds and I talked to your rabbi and it's the perfect thing for you. So, to make a long story short, because we can go on for hours, I went on CAY. I was in the third year of CAY, which was 75, 76, at Kibbutz Ma'ale Chamisha. I heard about Garin Arava during the year. I was invited to Kinus right after I came back. By the way, it was the most fantastic year of my life, and probably to this day, it's sad to say, what I did that year working with cows was maybe the most satisfying work I ever did, all because of Stephen Schafer. And I've done a lot of things since then, but the rest is history. I joined Garin Arava. Steve Schafer, I didn't make Aliyah with the first group. Right away, Rabbi Schafer gave me my first job, something similar to what Lori did, only on the West Coast. And the rest is history, and all I can say is I've never met anyone more inspiring than Stephen Schafer, and it's just great that whoever thought of doing this day to think about him after all these years. Thank you.
My name is Howie Levin, now Hadass Levin. Certainly, as I also wrote on Facebook, Steve Schafer was probably one of the most profound and I think meaningful influences really in terms of changing my life and bringing my life to where I am today. First and foremost, obviously it's a heritage really from even before that because I'm an Asrui product. I went to Asrui, I was in Asrui many years, all through the entire format, and as a Siftiite, basically was on a track really, almost on a runway, really to take off to really the experience of where I've gotten to today. But I want to tell you about four particular experiences, or three additional particular experiences that I remember with Steve. First of all, when I was in Garin Arava, Steve said, okay, we have to Israelicize the reform movement. We're going to do this. And he was almost like a general in battle. Okay, we were in battle, okay? The reform movement really didn't want to become Zionists.
We're still in battle.
Okay, we're still in battle. They really sort of supported the Israel program, sort of, okay? But we were really at war, and he sent me to Camp Swig, where we met.
Yeah, I was there.
Where we met. And he said, okay, I'm sending you out to Swig. You're going to promote the Israel programs. And this was part of Garin Arava's mandate. I was at Camp Swig, and Steve Makoff, right? Wasn't that the director? Wouldn't let me talk to the kids. And that was it. I was in siege for 3 days. 3 days, okay? I'm talking with Steve on the phone, back and forth. What do we do? How do we do it? And Steve is sort of maneuvering, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Finally, Steve Makoff eventually conceded, and I was able to talk to the kids and talk to the staff. And I think there's a few people that came from Swig as a result of that. We sort of like got together and whatever. So that was an adventure, but that was really an experience in the trenches with Steve. We were like shoulder to shoulder, and we were like seeing exactly how we're going to be able to do that, which was really good training for our next experience, was the creation of Artza. Now this was full-fledged war, okay?
Plastering the building.
Michael comes up with this idea. We'll start to talk about it with the Israel staff. This sounds really good, but we're going to mount a major assault now. And we go to the biennial convention, really to create ARTSA. And this was just unbelievable. And this was really, Steve was now a 4-star general in my book, basically helping us, architecting, guiding us, and really working behind the scenes to a great deal to get us to where we finally got to with the creation of ARTSA. In spite of some things that were said there, go back to your this kibbutz and that, and et cetera, et cetera. Those who were there will relate to that.
I've got to say,
famous
I'm sorry,
sentence.
I have to say this. I remember one particular official of the reform movement after, how he was leading us, but we were all doing all sorts of things like plastering places with petitions. One particular high-level person in the reform movement telling us, "What the are you guys doing?"
No, I remember who that was.
We won't get that up. And finally, my last memory really was Steve was in St. Thomas when I went to go visit him. As a person who really affected my life very, very substantially, and brought me to a very happy place because I'm very happy with what I'm doing and what I do. And I went to visit him in St. Thomas. It was a different moment, reflection on what was in the past, and it's just great. And all I can say is thank you, Steve Schafer, really for changing my life and for changing so many other lives, and for really having a profound impact really on Jewish existence and the Jewish future, because it's an exponential effect. Each one of us as a product of this experience that we've had together, joined together to create others and yield really an exponential effect, which I think is really having a major effect even here today in Israel, and certainly I think in world Judaism. Thank you.
Hold on one second, I'll try again.
First of all, I'm very, very moved, and I've been very, very excited about this day to see all of you, particularly Paul and
What's your name?
what's her name?
Debbie.
I know that's from overseas, but everybody in this room. I was amazed that I didn't even know David. Where's David?
He said he had to leave.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that he had a connection with Steve.
Really?
And what was remarkable is how many people who have already spoken, and those of you who haven't yet, who said Steve was my mentor. I think a lot of us felt that. I certainly did for many years. 11 and a half years ago, Debbie asked me to send some comments, tributes, on the occasion of Steve's 75th birthday. Steve was born a day before me, but many years before, on September 23rd, 1927, the same year as my father. And my first connection was that I came to Israel in 1972 for the one-year program. And my brother came as a participant, many of you know him, Gary, on EIE. And through my brother, I was introduced to Hank, who offered me a job the following summer to work as a junior counselor with a guy named Reuben Firestone who worked with another group. And I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts from those comments that I sent to Debbie on the occasion of Steve's birthday. In addition to being a soldier who fought in Israel's War of Independence, an abundantly talented educator and congregational rabbi, Steve Schafer was a brilliant philosopher, teacher, carpenter, master home builder, plumber, ship's captain, and organizational architect. Besides all that, he has been a wonderful family man and my mentor. Steve was my first real boss immediately after graduating college, and he played a very important part in my professional and personal development. Oh yes, and beyond all of above, Steve Schafer possessed a keen sense of humor, endless energy, and a razor-sharp mind. Below are recollections of a few of the areas wherein Steve impacted my life and the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of others. I met Steve in the summer of 1973 while serving as a counselor for a Nifty in Israel summer program after finishing a year of study at the one-year program of the Hebrew University. A friend from California, Reuben Firestone, who was also hired as a counselor for another Nifty in Israel program, and I decided to return to California in August of 1973 by flying to Tehran and then traveling from there overland via Pakistan, India, and on to the Far East, and from there back to California. Unfortunately, a problem arose. A massive monsoon rain occurred throughout the region and resulted in more than 1 million homeless refugees. So Reuven and I turned to Rabbi Schafer to ask for a favor. We wanted Steve to intercede on our behalf in our request to volunteer on the peace ship until the refugee situation in the troubled region subsided. Throughout the summer of 1973, we had overheard Rabbi Schafer speaking to Israeli peace activist Abi Nathan via ship-to-shore Haifa radio. Later, we learned that Steve served as the Peace Ship Foundation's volunteer treasurer, and as such, he had assisted Abi bring his dream to fruition, a major project called the Peace Ship, a ship furnished with a fully operational radio station broadcasting the voice of peace from somewhere in the Mediterranean. I understood that during the difficult years in New York, Rabbi Schafer arranged for Nifty Kids to donate time and energy, volunteering to paint the ship and contribute in many other ways to general maintenance projects. With Steve's help, Reuven and I volunteered to work on the peace ship for 1 week in mid-August 1973, but ended up staying over 10 weeks until Abi shut down the ship's activities due to a lack of funds towards the end of the Yom Kippur War in late November 1973. Needless to say, the 10-week experience Reuven and I spent on the peace ship left an indelible, unforgettable mark on our hearts and souls. In 1971, if I go back earlier, Steve accepted a job to take over Nifty following Rabbi Hank Skirball's departure to make Aliyah to Israel, and he agreed to do so on condition that the UAHC agreed to his plan to create the UAHC Youth Division, an organizational plan under which all 4 major reform youth activities were to be united and coordinated. The National Federation Temple Youth, or Nifty Youth Movement, Reform Movement camps. Steve played a crucial or critical role in infusing Hebrew and Israel-oriented curricula into the Reform Movement summer camp program. The College Education Department and the International Education Department, or IED, under which Nifty and Israel programs were operated. Before Steve had come in 1971, none of those particular youth activities had anything necessarily to do with each other. He united them, and he got Rabbi Alexander Schindler's permission and support to do so. Almost immediately after meeting Steve in 1973, he offered me a job to come to New York to be his assistant in promoting, developing, and administering the Nifty and Israel programs. While very flattered, I told Steve I would first need to finish my undergraduate degree in Jewish Studies at UCLA, and indeed almost 2 years later, in April of 1975, I accepted Steve's offer and moved to New York City. My recollection is correct, and Paul can probably remind. In the summer of 1973, there were 5 Nifty summer programs, maybe Hank remembers. I believe there were 4 Bible tours and 1 mitzvah corps program, amounting to approximately 200 high school students. It was clear that many more Reform kids were visiting Israel with their congregational rabbis and with local Jewish community-supported programs. Steve wanted to enhance the connection between American Jewry and Israel, and he saw the Nifty Israel programs as a prime opportunity to bring the Reform movement closer to Israel and Zionism. Therefore, one of Steve's major goals was to increase the volume, variety, and duration of the Israel programs. One of the first recommendations that I made to Steve was to change the name of the basic Nifty Israel program. I said that Bible tours just wasn't going to do it for our kids. And in fact, the following summer, they changed the name to Israel Academy. Where's Paul?
Right, Israel Academy.
Okay?
1, 2, 3.
Israel Academy was better than Bible tours, but I said I didn't think of it. I actually was at UCLA, and I recruited a group and brought it to Israel that summer, and I called it the Israel Experience. Because we were working with Nor V'Chalus and the Jewish Agency, they took that name, and if you check their records, from 1975 onwards, after that summer, it was almost every program was the Israel Experience. So I can have a little time to explain
Hooray.
2-year-old.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to skip over this stuff about Yehalel Lotan. You've heard about that from others. And just say that over time we built up the ranks of Garin Arava with graduates of CAY and Jewish college students recruited from outreach work that I, as the director of the College Education Department, together with the work of the Shlichim and college campuses, in North America would provide new immigrants for both Yehel and Latan, the second Reform kibbutz movement. Steve brought me back to New York City to serve as the central shaliach to the UAC Youth Division from 1981 to 83, when I had the great privilege of working with Chaim Sharet, at which time we established an additional garin, or settlement group, the Har Chalutz, which was Chaim's brainchild. Okay, I'm going to skip other stuff about Netzer and blah, blah. Just in conclusion, I believe that the underlying much more of above-mentioned activity, including contributions to the peace ship and the building of a vibrant international Zionist youth movement, was a deep concern that Steve Schafer felt about the direction that Judaism was taking in Israel, moving towards somewhere between extreme secularism and extreme or equally extreme ultra-Orthodoxy on the one hand, and perhaps equally extreme assimilation and apathy among the young generation in the American Jewish community. Steve inherently believed that by strengthening the ties between Reformed Jewish youth of North America and the state of Israel and its people, note, 3 decades before birthright, both would be mutually enhanced by the relationship. People have talked today from the heart about how much Steve really impacted their personal lives. I'll just tell 2 other little quick anecdotes. I would not have met Eti had it not been for Steve giving me his Lincoln Continental and sending me to Kennedy Airport in order to pick up the 3 women who were coming to be counselors that summer.
Eti, Elisa.
What? Eti, Elisa, and Varda.
Did you bring them right to Coots?
No, I didn't bring them to Coots. I was kicked out of my apartment a month before because my roommate, David, doesn't matter, he got
who made
married.
the shoes?
Wait.
Didn't they come to our house?
I brought them to an apartment where I was actually living, subletting, Debbie Haken, okay? And we have Danny here, okay? She was my landlord. Well, she went off to do something and she wasn't around during that summer. In any event, that was one. But I have to say, Steve's humor overrides everything else. And there's some things that I won't say for, I'll tell you, I'll call you Nina to tell you this one, I'll never forget, Paul mentioned about going out to Kennedy Airport. How many? 20, 30 times. We had all these departures. Steve and I used to go there all the time. And one day, I think it was 1976, if I'm not mistaken, the bicentennial in New York, the day of Entebbe, okay? We're driving out to Kennedy to send off kids where Dov was going to pick them up at the other end, and Hank. And there was a huge traffic jam on the Long Island Expressway. You know the Long Island Expressway? And it just wasn't moving. And we had to get there, and they had to get there. We had a flight. We had several flights to catch. And we approached the area next to, what is it called, Shea Stadium, where the Mets play? And it was 7th inning. People were parking their cars on the parkway and walking the rest of the way to get to the game. I think they were playing the LA Dodgers, and I'm from LA. And I'll never forget it. And Steve looked at me, he looked at this situation, he said, "Now that's religion." All right, you know what? I will say one more on that one. We used to work really hard, and we'd get on the train and go all the way to Wyncote in a 2.5-hour train ride from New York City. And we'd get there, I don't know, 12:30, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. And we would always go into one of those supermarkets that's open 24 hours because Steve had a penchant and it became very contagious. It's called Breyer's Butter Almond. I don't know. Nina remembers this. And one day he's half asleep, and we're on the way, it's 1 in the morning. He takes a look in the middle of the supermarket. Nobody else is there. He says, on the package of Breyer's Butter Almond, he says, all natural. He says, all natural. Dog shit is natural. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this.
Hi, Nina. We love you. We all love you. Everybody knows that when I came to be a shaliach under Steve's supervision, Steve gave me all the support I needed. and much more. And Steve not only changed my life, but he changed the life of 100 families that are living now in Har Chalutz. And for me, the nicest thing is to see these little children that were born in Har Chalutz, and for them it's natural. This is the place they were born, and they're playing and they're having all these activities, and they don't know that this is because of Steve Schafer vision and support. So every time I look at these kids, I remember Steve. And now in Har Chalutz, my eldest daughter also lives in Har Chalutz with 3 available grandchildren, 2 of them in the army, and one is only 15. And we are very happy, and we thank Steve for his doings. Thank you.
Hi Nina, hi all. Clearly, Steve Schafer changed my life by deciding that I would be the first shaliach to work with him. I'd like to give it in a bit of a perspective, and there's another man who also had a great influence on my life, an author by the name of Maurice Samuel. He wrote a book called Level Sunlight. And I would like to use that theme in how I see Steve in perspective today. Let's put it this way. It began when he interviewed me for Shlichut. I didn't realize I was being interviewed. He wanted to meet me. I thought, well, you know, I'm going to be invited for an interview for this Shlichut, probably to Jerusalem, to the Nifty office. In any case, it was somewhat unexpected for me to be invited to think about the Reform movement. I knew about the Reform movement, but I actually thought that I would be shaliach to the Kibbutz Aliyah desk of that time. And Steve, he came to Gesher Haziv, and he said, look, I'd like us to meet in the swimming pool of Gesher Haziv. And in the swimming pool of Gesher Haziv, he started asking me about what I thought was important in terms of maybe Reform Judaism and Zionism. And the common denominator we got to very quickly was the matter of Reform Zionist community in Israel. And the fact that we got to that common denominator so quickly, I assume that that was one of the reasons he thought I would be suitable for that shlichut. And that, I didn't realize that our little chat in the swimming pool was in fact his out-of-the-box way of interviewing and deciding if I was a suitable candidate. Because Steve Schafer was a man who worked both in the box and out of the box. And that, of course, was his advantage over many others. But I will say this in perspective. And as I said, our theme is level sunlight. Why did Steve Schafer want Reform Zionist community? And we had these discussions later on when I was in New York many, many times. Number one, he believed that only total Reform community in Israel could impact on Israel. And that a community of ritual only, as in America, was not enough. Number two, and these 2 points had equal weight in Steve's agenda. Number two, realizing the ignorance, somewhere between ignorance and hostility to Reform Judaism that existed here in Israel during the 1970s, he felt that in order for his chanichim, his kids in Nifty, to have a place where they could identify with, he needed Reform Zionist community as an educational tool when he sent young people to Israel on the reform on his programs. So the next item on his agenda became, for all kinds of reasons, political, financial, the backing for this whole enterprise, and that was his motivation in instigating the foundation of Artsa. Because he wanted to have a situation where he'd have Artsa groups planted everywhere in America in order to recruit for his programs. So I'll end by asking a question at the level sunlight. What happened? Where is Steve's vision now? I think, in truth, there is a tentative beginning. I think Steve would be frustrated that the whole vision has not advanced more. And that possibly is a challenge for the next generation. The vision is there, and it is waiting for the next generation to pick it up and carry it out. Toda.
We want to thank you, Nina, for sending us this lovely poetry to help us share together with you your own feeling, and for you to be with us in spirit through this beautiful poetry. In your own words, in Nina's own words, this first poem by Marge Piercy is called To Be of Use. It's the best description I've ever known of Steve, and also of Hank, and Alan, and Susie, and David, and Judy, and Dob, and Shirley, and Michael, and Gidon, and so many who made this work a life. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who stand in the line and haul in their places, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing, well done, has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, hoppy vases that held corn, are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. The second poem by Linda Pastan, Traveling Light, is my song of mourning for Steve, the man of my young and of my old love, a man who was indeed my other half and me his. I'm only leaving you for a handful of days, but it feels as though I'll be gone forever, the way the door closes behind me with such solidity. The the way my suitcase carries everything I'd need for an eternity of traveling light. I've left my hotel number on your desk, instructions about the dog and heating dinner. But like the weather front they warn is on its way with its switchblades of wind and ice, our lives have minds of their own.
I am so thrilled and honored that this memorial service was put together for my father, because this is the memorial service he deserved. And that I could make it, at least one person in my family could make it today. It's just so wonderful. And all of you who are here, the students and people under 30, you are his legacy. My father would, if he knew that there were 2,700 students involved in all these programs today, I could just see him. He'd go, oh my God, you know, he would just be totally thrilled. We'd have ice cream. Even my mother was not Nina. My mother, my father's first wife, wrote something very beautiful, and she sent it this morning. I wanted to read part of it only because I'd been asked, what was Rabbi Schafer's motivation? You know, what made him such a Zionist? And it really was his first visit to Israel. And I think he wanted all of you to have the impact of what that was like. It changed his life. My mother wrote, I met Steve Schafer in October 1949 when he first landed by boat in the port of Haifa. My father and I were there to welcome him and pick up my first cousin, Shani Lewinson, who was making Aliyah. Steve and Shani met on the boat, and because Steve did not know anybody, my mother found a room for him. He found and registered for his first Hebrew ulpan and began fixing things around our house. I was still in the army. That was my mother. My mother loved Steve, who was so handy and helpful, even though she spoke no English and Steve spoke no Hebrew. She helped him with his Hebrew, and my father with learning Jewish history and Jewish thought. It brought my mother comfort, especially since 8 to 9 months earlier, on March 27th, 1948, my brother Balfour was killed on Mount Zion. I need some water. I was meant to. Do I have any left? Okay. Well, if somebody can bring me some water, I'll be. Thank you.
Here's the first aid. The rest is on the way.
Thank you. This is one of the things that happens to me when I get thirsty. Really excited. Things happened fast. On March 21st, 1950, after a year of mourning for Balfour, my mother and father got married. We promised my parents that we would make our home in Israel after Steve finished rabbinical studies. In August of 1950, when the Korean War started, we came by boat to the Golden Medina, as my mother's father used to call it. A month later, we were in Cincinnati, HUC, and Steve started the 5 long, hard years of rabbinic school. Steve toiled while I played. How come? Because of my Hebrew, Arabic, and knowledge of Jewish books, and some Judaica, I was offered the job of desk librarian at the excellent library of HUC. I got to know some of the students and professors. One of them was Rabbi Dick Hirsch, who could not be here today. Rabbi Hirsch, she actually met in Israel. He was the best man at my father's wedding. As my father used to say, there were about 2,000 people at this wedding, and my father knew 4 of them. In 1955, Steve was chosen by the HUC to start a new project, a summer school program for new rabbinical students. The Kaufman family from Sears and Roebuck donated their summer estate in Towanda, Pennsylvania, to the Hebrew Union College. Well, we had to transform this estate into a school that included dorms. The professors for Hebrew and Jewish history were from HUC, and they were the teachers, and our daughter Debbie was the mascot. Right, okay. I'm not going to read everything that my mother wrote, but sometime in the late 50s, Rabbi Sam Cook, the national director of NIFTY, suggested to Steve that there's an opportunity for both of them to live in Israel. They were looking for a rabbi to run the Leo Beck School in Haifa, and he recommended it to my father. My mother loves to tell the story about, as an inducement and encouragement, he gave my mother and father a whole lot of money to take to the Leo Beck School, and it was in cash. And they carried it, my mother carried it in her handbag and handed it over. And in those days, there wasn't much security. In Haifa, after long discussions and many considerations, my father declined. And a year later, Rabbi Bob Samuel and his wife accepted the position. I think, this is my mother speaking, I think that the 1967 Six-Day War, especially the recapture of Old City Jerusalem, brought a new confidence and pride that enabled and encouraged former dreamers to begin believing that Reform Judaism can have young Zionists who would be able and willing to plant roots in the land of Israel. There are always big questions of our next generation. Sometimes there are answers, but the questions must continue. And I'm very proud of the part that my mother also played in supporting my father and his Zionistic and interest in Jewish education. He fell in love, as I said, he fell in love with the country on that first visit. What I also wanted to say in terms of my experience, because everybody here has also said a lot. During Dad's years at the head of the UAHC division, my whole family, my brothers, Jonathan, Joel, and I, were brought in to participate in different ways. I was encouraged to, and just given the job of illustrating the first, along with Paul Reichenbach, who may still be in the room, to illustrate the first pamphlet about being NIFTY in Israel. And in fact, I designed the first t-shirt and poster, and I actually have copies of those with me. But one of the things that was most important about my dad that I wanted to say was, he recognized, appreciated, and encouraged everyone for their own strengths. And he saw it in them and validated them, and saw the contributions that people could make. And he didn't stand on ceremony to interview and stand over anybody with a hammer to make sure that they were doing it right. He trusted them, and he wanted them to do what, and contribute and be a part of and have their own contributions validated. He never stood around and tooted his own horn, and in fact, I heard so many stories, and the names, and all of your names, you know, you who are here, Michael, Livni, and Gidon Elad, just Hank, Skirball, everybody here. I just heard your names so often that even though I didn't spend much time with you myself, I knew your stories. Anyway, I am very grateful to be here, and I think that those of you who are here with me know that he deserved and would have loved all of us to be together and share stories and continue these relationships.
Where you are, Yahi, at this moment in your life is a direct result of man named Rabbi Stephen Schafer, and we are very grateful. The most fitting way to end this ceremony, and as you know, Israelis love ceremonies, right? I'll ask you to rise and let us sing Hatikva, which represents Rabbi Stephen Schafer so much, the hope.